Good morning, guys. You know what time it is. It's time for tactics. So it's the morning of February 10th, 2026. And you got to watch this game that I play against an 1878 from India. This guy was very strong. He has been a 1970 in the recent past. And it was a very, very tough game that I played. I was barely able to edge him out. And you're going to learn a lot watching this. So when you play people from India or you play higher rated players, typically a lot of them like to play D4. I have a video on that called 1 D4's Week, which is super entertaining and fun to watch. And it's going to teach you how to play against D4 when they play the Queen's Gambit. But we haven't gone over how to play against someone playing D4 when they don't play the Queen's Gambit. We have gone over how to play against E4, which you'll find in my video called the North Central Open Round 4 tournament game. So make sure to go find that to see how to play against E4. But to play against D4 when they don't play the Queen's Gambit, tune into this game. So he plays D4, and I play the aggressive tactical response, knight to F6. He plays knight to F3. Good move, keeping me from playing one of my favorite defenses, which is the Budapest Gambit, which I'll play against the Queen's Gambit. G6. G3. Now again, this is not the London system, but it's a very solid setup by white. And I'm still going to make the same moves if they play the London system. Bishop G2. Castles. Quick development. He castles. D6. Now I like to play the King's Indian defense also. So if you've seen my videos on the King's Indian attack, this is the exact same thing, guys, but we're playing it as black. And it's actually more popular playing the King's Indian defense than even the King's Indian attack is. So it's the exact same moves, which keeps it easy on not having to learn a whole bunch of theory and a whole bunch of different variations. So my opponent plays C3, which is still a book move. And it's also a thematic move from London players. So the only difference is instead of fianchettoing their bishop on the king side and castling, they are going to be playing bishop F4, E3, knight BD2, followed by C3. So we're still going to be making the same moves whether they're playing this or if they're playing the London system. So I play knight BD7. Look familiar? Just like the King's Indian attack, but we're playing it as black. Queen to C2. E5. So now we got to strike at the center, guys. We have 2 defenders, and he has 2 attackers, so tie goes to the defense. So if he trades off, we're going to take with the D pawn. We're not going to take with the knight. He goes E4. C6. Bishop to G5. Now I got to put his bishop to question, ask him what he's planning on doing with it. He decided to take. These are all excellent moves or book moves, guys, up to this point. I took here. Knight BD2. A5. Carving out space on the queen side with ideas of maybe going B5 and a queen side pawn storm. Knight to C4. Okay, so he's also attacking our pawn on D6, right? So I'm really proud of this move, and I'm going to explain it a little bit in depth. So he's attacking our pawn on D6, but I had an idea. Now remember, this is a Tactics with Trav chess channel. So a lot of the moves that I'm doing are, not a lot, but a good number of them are going to be a little bit dubious, a little bit tricky. We're going to set traps for our opponents. So we have to learn how to play positionally, but we also really focus on playing tactically and in a fun and exciting style. So instead of just defending boringly with like queen c7 or maybe queen e7, or maybe just moving our knight to like b6, which allows a trade of knights, knight takes b6, queen takes b6. I don't want to do any of that. What I want to do is potentially trap his knight. So we're going to try to set up a Venus flytrap here, guys. So this is what I tried in the game. So instead of doing any of those things, I played b6, which looks super dubious. And you're like, why would you play b6? Well, my plan is if he takes knight takes d6, I'm going to move bishop to a6. And then I'm going to try to move my queen to either c7 or e7, put pressure on his knight, and cut off all points of contact so his knight gets trapped on our half of the board. So knights on the 6th rank are very dangerous. So we have to be careful to be able to actually snare this knight. So it takes a little bit of planning, and I'm going to explain the next few moves here because I actually made a slight error in my own trap. So he took on d6, he took the bait. Now I moved bishop to a6, which it's funny because Stockfish rated b6 as a mistake, but then it rated this as a great move. So I just don't think it recognized that I was trying to do this. But anyway, it's the difference between computers and humans. You can only take a Stockfish with a grain of salt. Rook f to d1. So he sees what I'm trying to do and is going to defend. His plan is to defend his knight on the d file with maybe taking back on e5. I take back with the knight, and I'm trying to cut off the c4 square because we're already cutting off the points of contact of f5, f7, e8, c8, b7, and b5, which is the purpose of moving bishop to a6 to begin with, to cut off b5 and add more attack and more power to the c4 square, which we don't, that's the most likely square that he's going to try to escape to. So he recognizes that. Now I move queen e7, threatening to win the knight. He takes on e5. I took back with the knight. And now he plays b3. And the idea behind b3 was to bring his knight back to c4 because he's anticipating me moving rook f to d8, which would work. And it does work. And here's where I'm a little bit ashamed because my plan was great. It was a little dubious, but it would have totally worked had I executed it correctly. So I should have played b5 here to really pull this off because I could win the knight for a pawn. But instead, he and I both thought that I was going to move this, and I did. But rook f to d8 is actually a miss, and that's what I played in the game. But what I should have played was b5 and then rook f d8, and that would have ensured that I could win the knight because he won't have enough defenders, and he can't add enough to defenders to his knight to save it. So I missed and went rook f d8. Still a good move, but not the best move. He goes here, and I take. He takes, and I take back. Now, so we got our pawn back. So yes, we got our pawn back, and our pawn structure is better. So if you remove all the pieces and the king off the board, we have a better pawn structure. So going into an endgame, we have an advantage, and we have an advantage right now. So he moves here, queen c5, protecting this pawn because he's looking to fork us on c6 if I didn't move there. Now he takes anyway. Great move by my opponent. So my opponent's a little tactical here as well. So now we got to be careful because, pause your videos here. What would happen if I took queen takes c6? All right, so if I took queen takes c6, that would be a massive blunder because then white could push e5 with his bishop attacking my queen, which is also skewered with the rook on a8. So I'd have to move my queen and I'd lose my rook. And then, or maybe first, he takes my bishop on f6. So it's a double attack and a skewer at the same time. So we don't want to allow him that tactical shot. So remember, queen takes c6 is a massive blunder because of e5. And then after we move our queen out of the way, he can either take on f6 or he can take on a8 first. So knowing that and seeing that, I did not take on c6. I traded the rook off here. Takes back. And now I move my rook to safety and counterattack his knight on c6. Now he moves e5. But totally different situation. Now I'm not skewered. I never took the knight to begin with, so we're okay. Take back here. Knight takes. Queen takes. Queen d2. Now, I want to trade queens here, guys, because remember what I said about the pawn structure? If I can trade this down all the way into the end game, I'm more likely than not going to win this game, or it's going to be a draw. So I want to trade queens. He does not want to trade queens. So queen e2. And my idea is if he takes on h6, that's fine. There's no real follow-up there. I'm going to take on a2. And that a2 pawn is more critical than that h6 pawn because both my pawns on the queen side are connected. So positionally speaking, you have to understand that and notice that now that a5 pawn is going to be really dangerous. And I'm going to be able to roll all the way down the board if white doesn't come up with a plan to stop me. He moves c1, recognizing that trading knights or trading queens is bad. I take the pawn. And now he takes on h6. I come back here. He moves h4, queen c2, attacking the rook and pawn simultaneously. He moves here. Stockfish didn't like that. Wanted him to stay on the open d file and move rook to d6. I moved here. I took. Takes. Now I come back here trying to trade queens again. Because again, going into an endgame, removing all the pieces off the board, that a5 pawn is going to be really dangerous. And even if his king swings all the way over to the queen side to stop that pawn, then I can wipe out his pawns on the king side. And probably queen, well, I will queen before he does. Here, again, attempting to trade queens. And even if he moves out of the way, I got two attackers on the c3 pawn. So that's going to be a target. Queen e3. And he's attacking my b6 pawn. So I have to move my pawn, or I should move my pawn, and I do, to b5. He comes behind it and attacks both pawns. So now I defend the pawn and simultaneously attack his rook on c1. He has to move the rook, so he moves to e1. Now I take the pawn on c3. He takes the a5 pawn. I move here, defending my rook, but simultaneously attacking his rook. He moves a8 check, queen a8 check. And Stockfish says I should have moved rook to c8 to prevent this move coming up. But what's interesting is I did see the move coming up and didn't think it was going to be an issue. However, that's more of an issue of improperly diagnosing the position. So and I'll explain that in depth here. So queen g7 is what I played. And Stockfish did not like that because of this move, which is rated a brilliant move by white. Rook takes e6. And the reason it's considered brilliant is because after I win the rook for my pawn and bishop, it's going to be impossible to stop the checks from white because my king is so vulnerable. So that was the improper diagnosis by me of the position, was that I should not have allowed that, and I should have moved rook to c8 instead of king to g7. So just very minor, but is the difference between a win and a draw. Now he can go here with check, king f6, queen takes b5, check, He blocks. Now, general principles of chess, you usually want to add more pressure to a pin piece. So I do so with queen to e1 and also defending my pawn on e6 should my king get separated from it. Queen here. I start rolling my pawn to add more pressure and block the diagonal checks coming from his queen. He moves here to try to release the pin. I push e4, check. Now this is why I think moving rook to c8 was needed, was because I can't technically, if perfect moves are played, I won't be able to stop the checks, and this should be a threefold repetition, and I just won't be able to stop the checks. So he comes here with check. I'm thinking the game's going to be a draw. It should be a draw. We're at zeros right now. Stockfish has it tied up at 0 across the board. So there's another lesson to be learned from this game here, which is when you have a draw, take the draw. Do not decline the draw or try to be a hero and play for the win, because a lot of times, and I think there's a statistic that backs this up, you end up losing the game when you try to win the game instead of just drawing the game. So he comes here to try to avoid the threefold repetition, and he doesn't want to draw. And I was, pleasantly surprised, because that is his saving grace, not really mine, because a rook is dominant over a bishop. His bishop is not positioned well. Here. Now I go here. And he goes for a skewer, which from this point, guys, pause your videos. What should white do? All right. So the best move here is queen to f5 check and just keep the checks coming, because you need to draw the game, because otherwise black is going to win. So he wins. He takes the queen, which just shocked me. It's a mistake. Stockfish hated this move. I take back here. And this game should be easy to win now. So he comes down here. I come here. He defends the pawn with this. But this is lost, guys, for white. Now I can pin the pawn. Rooks are dominant over bishops in the endgame, even with his extra pawn. And he makes the move king to f1. So pause your videos, guys. What should we play as black? That's right. King to f3. Taking the opposition, locking his king into place, and threatening rook to d1 checkmate. The only move he has is king to e1, in which case we're going to take the pawn on f2 with rook takes f2. But he doesn't even play it, because I think he's so focused on these pawns, and he plays here, which is a blunder, and I end up checkmating him. But the point of this game, guys, there's actually a couple things. I had a regular reviewer request. Thank you for your views, Zap7. And you were asking about defenses to play as black. This is my recommended defense for d4 when you're not facing the queen's gambit. And when you're playing against e4, play the defense that I played in my round 4 game from the North Central Open. So that was against the 1990 Avnish Ram Abernathy, great player. And that game was also very well played. This game was also very well played, except for the last couple of moves. But this game, Stockfish graded me at 90% and my opponent at 82%. So this was a well played game. It actually showed me at a 2350 rated play in this game, and then he was 2100. So we played at a very high level in this game, but lots to learn from. Also in-game play, what not to do, take the draw, and just a lot of things like the trap earlier, making sure to, if you're going to go for that, really, in order to pull it off, you have to execute it correctly. So I should have pressed b5 instead of rook f to d8, which was just too premature. That should have been after b5. So anyway, guys, hope you learned something, and we'll see you on the next video